Okay, all right, so our recording is in place. Again, thank you for joining us this morning. Welcome to Converting to QuickBooks Online, What to Expect, brought to you by Intuit Academy. My name is Katie Peterson, and I will be presenting for you today. I am a Certified Pro Advisor, certified in the 3 desktop solutions, as well as the Harmony and Classic QuickBooks Online platforms. I'm also an Advanced Certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor and a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. My firm is located in Vancouver, not BC, Washington, not DC, also known as the Portland metro area up here in the Pacific Northwest. You can see we have some links here for my website, blog, and Twitter feed if you're interested in following up on some other things that I do. I also consider myself an accounting technology addict and appaholic. So I'm super excited about QuickBooks Connect next week and getting together with all of our peers and developers, and it's going to be really exciting. Today's course will be eligible for 1 CPE credit. To receive your credit, you must stay for the entire webinar. We will give you a CPE keyword during the webinar that you will submit at the end of the webinar, and it will make you eligible for CPE credit. Your CPE certificate will be emailed to you within 2 weeks or 14 business days. Please note that the CPE certificate will be sent to you at the email address that you used to register for today's webinar. So if you have multiple email addresses, just note that the certificate goes to whichever one you used to register today. Our agenda and learning objectives for today, we are looking to understand how to convert from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. We're going to learn about the limitations of converting, understand some alternatives to converting, and identify things to do after converting to QuickBooks Online. If you have not already downloaded the course materials, you can get them at intuitacademy.com/materials. There are some other resources here that we will be referring to throughout the presentation that can be valuable assets throughout the QuickBooks Online conversion process. Some of these links I will paste into the chat window as we go, but once you download the course materials, you should have these links also. You can see here that there's some for QB for Mac, so that's something that we don't go into in great detail today. So that's a good link to have if you are a Mac user. And then just some other limitations depending on what you are converting from. Let's start by taking a look at the new QuickBooks Online. If you haven't checked out the new QuickBooks Online recently, you really need to. It has keyboard shortcuts now. It's improving with every release. You can see here the home screen of the QuickBooks Online Harmony platform, and it's just really getting better all the time. Things are changing, evolving. It's really exciting. They also, I think, put out release notes every 6 weeks when they put out a release that you can find at the QuickBooks Online blog. They have nice little screenshots there and information. So if you have something that has been a roadblock for you or a feature that you've been waiting for, that's definitely something to subscribe to so that you can stay up to date and learn when those things become available for you. Now let's jump into converting. So we're all here to learn about converting to QuickBooks Online. So converting can be very easy. You can see here we have a little screenshot for exporting to QuickBooks Online. This is kind of an older screenshot here. But you need to update your QuickBooks first. So from the Help window, there's a little button to update QuickBooks, which if you are an existing desktop user, you're probably very familiar with it. And then, of course, we restart after we update. And then we just have a nice little button to export the file to QuickBooks Online. And we will go in product and look at that a little bit later in the webinar. You want to make sure that you are in single user mode, first of all, and that the file is stored on your local drive. So you don't want to have a file that's living on a server and try to convert that to QuickBooks Online from a different computer that's connected to the server. You also want to make sure that you don't have any data integrity issues. So you want to do verify, rebuild. If you're having problems, you should correct them with the QB WinLog, or you can create and restore a portable company file and see if that gets rid of your problems. So this is showing one way to get your file up to QuickBooks Online, and that is with the desktop converter tool, which is in the screenshot. And then there's a second way, which is setting the QuickBooks Online company up in QuickBooks Online first and then uploading the data. And we're going to look at both of those solutions today. Let's look at some of the key features that are not in QuickBooks Online. So this is a little pop-up that you'll get if you go to convert your file from QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop with the Desktop Converter tool. We're going to clarify some of these things that might be misperceived. So first of all, let's look at multiple sales tax rates. So you cannot have multiple sales tax rates on the same transaction in QuickBooks Online. However, you can make compound rates where you have your state and local that make up one unified rate. So if you have a 6.5 and a 1.9, you can make that 8.4 rate in QuickBooks Online. The job costing, here it says that we don't have job costing, it has the progress invoicing here. There is basic job costing in QuickBooks Online, and there are workarounds for progress invoicing. So if you have a client where everything fits except for progress invoicing, just know that there are workarounds to do that locally in QuickBooks Online, or you can also look at add-on solutions. The custom sales form templates, you can customize the sales form templates in QuickBooks Online. It's just not as robust as QuickBooks Desktop, and the custom forms that you have in Desktop do not carry over to QuickBooks Online. The forms are formatted a little bit differently. It's a different platform, so those changes don't carry over from one system to the other, but there is customization that you can do in QuickBooks Online. The memorized transactions in QuickBooks Desktop are now called recurring transactions in QuickBooks Online. So those transactions do not come over from Desktop to Online, but you can recreate them once you get the information over to QuickBooks Online. So even though they don't move from one platform to another, they can be recreated, and they're just called recurring instead of memorized. And then let's look at inventory. So there is basic inventory in QuickBooks Online. Converting inventory from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online is a process in itself. It really depends on the inventory details of the company file that you're converting. There are a lot of resources out there to help walk you through that process. We're going to touch on some light things today about the way the inventory moves over to QuickBooks Online, but we're not going to go into huge detail about it because there's so many nuances with it. If you do need more resources on that, definitely make sure that you download the course materials today and look that information up and reach out to your peers that have probably done it before, may have experience with transferring the inventory, so that you can have some assistance with that. All right, so now that we know some things that may or may not make it a good fit for us, let's look at the actual process. So we saw that screenshot earlier of how to use the Desktop Converter tool, which we will demo here in a few moments also. But this is the screen where once you log in with your Intuit ID, you can choose the company that you want to import your data to. So I'm going to flip screens over here to my QuickBooks Desktop file. Move that over here for you guys to see. Okay, so we are looking at a sample company, which you can always play around with the sample desktop and sample QuickBooks Online files, so kind of practice this. So here we have Larry's Landscaping. If you've taken any QuickBooks certification test, you're probably familiar with Larry's Landscaping. Larry is a wonderful training and sample file, and we love him dearly. But today we're going to move him to QuickBooks Online. So we have two options to do this. The first one we're going to look at is that Desktop Converter tool. So, excuse me. So this is QuickBooks Accountant 2014. So our first step would be to go in here and update our QuickBooks right here from the Help menu. And I'm not actually going to do it right now for the sake of time, but let's pretend like I did. So we're going to pretend that I've updated QuickBooks and then closed and reopened my file. And then I want to convert my file to QuickBooks Online. So if you have been converting to QuickBooks Online for a few years now, you may have noticed that this button is kind of moved around through the menus on where exactly it lives. So we have this button here for copying the company file to QuickBooks Online. And then we have these export buttons that we're going to look at a little bit later to look at how we can export lists to QuickBooks Online to convert. But for now, we'll stick with the straight Desktop Converter tool, which lives under the Company menu. And then we just scroll all the way to the bottom to Export Company File to QuickBooks Online. So if this is something that you don't remember when you go to convert it, we just do what we always do when we're looking for something, right? And just kind of flip through the menus, and then eventually you'll find it. But it's right here in company. So our first step is help and update the QuickBooks. And our second step is exporting that company to QuickBooks Online. So once you push this button for the desktop converter tool, it's going to ask you to log in with your Intuit ID. You want to make sure that you're using the Intuit ID where all of your QuickBooks Online company files live, so that you can map it to one that you already have open, or so that you can create a new file through the desktop converter tool. So let me just show you the client list that we're logging into today. Let me drag that over here. So here you can see the Intuit ID that I'm logged into is QBOA@petersonbusinessservices.com. So I have my company file, and then I have these three companies down here, Katie's Cookie Shop and some business sample companies. So when I go into the desktop converter tool, I'm going to log in with that Intuit ID. And any of those companies that are eligible to have the file converted will show up on my list here. Let's just sign in. So let's see, Peterson. Let's get this in here. So any of those files that are showing on my client list for this email address, the QBOA@petersonbusinessservices, are going to show here. So here we have the option to replace existing QuickBooks Online company, and you can see that there's just one showing on the list. So Katie's Cookie Shop and those other business samples are not eligible to be overwritten right now, but I can create a new QuickBooks Online company. So once I choose this button to create a new QuickBooks Online company, it's going to copy my data, send it to QuickBooks Online, and then add a new company to my client list when I log in at qboa.intuit.com or at office.intuit.com. You can see, looks good. We'll take it from here. So everything's looking good. My file's been sent to the cloud. When it's done, I will get an email in my inbox that says, congratulations, you've converted to QuickBooks Online. And then when I log in here to my client list, it'll just show up here on my list. Now, your second option to upload this information from QuickBooks Online is you can just go straight in here and do create a new QBO company. You can enter the name in here. You choose your product, Essentials Plus or Essentials or Plus with payroll. We'll say Essentials today. And now this is creating the QuickBooks Online company file with no data. Once this company file is created, it will give us the option to import our desktop data into the QuickBooks Online file. So here we have Larry's Landscaping. We push our little QuickBooks meatball to get it open. And then we can go in here and upload our information. So to upload from the QuickBooks Online file directly, we go to the gear icon up here by the company name, which is also called the Tools menu, and we go Import Desktop Data. So from here we can choose the file that we want to import. First we select the version. Depending on the version that you're using, you might get instructions. So let's pretend that we have someone, for some reason, is running QuickBooks 2006. We'll just choose that, and it's going to say this is what you need to do. We need to update our file. We need to import within the first 30 days. We need to make sure that we have the right permissions, like the admin, and make sure that we're using the proper web browser to get the information into QuickBooks Online. So once again, we can upload with the desktop converter tool, which we just did for Larry. We say OK. Or from directly within our QuickBooks Online client list, we can create a new QBO company. So those are the two ways to get your full file up into QuickBooks Online from QuickBooks Desktop. Now we're going to go into some other topics and look at some other ways that you could possibly pull data in if maybe you didn't want to push your entire file in to QuickBooks Online. Let's get our PowerPoint slide back up here. We looked at this one already. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so let's look at some limitations here. So we have some file size limitations for importing to QuickBooks Online. So from QuickBooks Desktop, if we want to view the file size, for us, for converting to QuickBooks Online, it's 350,000 targets. Before becoming a QuickBooks Online converter, I didn't even know really what targets were. I don't actually really still know what targets are in detail. All I know is that I have to push F2 and look at them over here. You can see that this file has 3,731 targets. So I'm well below the 350,000 target limit in Larry's landscaping. And of course, this is where you can check things like your file fragments, your updates, making sure that all of your list numbers are not ridiculously large for when you convert to QuickBooks Online. But mostly we're looking at our targets, and I have yet to personally see a file that comes close to the 350,000 target range that I was moving on to QuickBooks Online. I'm sure that there are people that have, but I personally haven't, so good luck with that, and hopefully you don't find somebody that's way over the limit. But if you do, then we'll look at things like condensing data, etc., which we're going to look at a little bit later in today's training. So some of our other limitations is importing within the first 60 days. So you want to make sure that once you create your new subscription, you want to get that data imported within 60 days. So this is to prevent your clients or yourself from overwriting data if you're running parallel files. So sometimes when we're converting someone to QuickBooks Online, we get them started with their subscription, we let them play around with it, we want them to get comfortable with it, maybe we're doing some training, and then you decide that they're ready and you want to pull that data in. So they give you that 60-day window to make sure that maybe your client hasn't spent the last 90 days importing data into QuickBooks Online instead of desktop, and then you accidentally overwrite, or they think that it's going to merge and it doesn't. So that's just kind of a safekeeping. So let's say that you set a client up with a subscription like that, and 90 days do go by and you haven't been able to upload it. It's not a big deal. All you have to do is you can either close it out and open up a new one, or I believe that there's a way to contact Intuit to get the data in, but honestly, it's going to overwrite. There's no reason to even try to get it in after 90 days. You can just inactivate that file and open up a brand new one and get the information in there. If you are giving someone a subscription just so that they can play around with it, some other things you may want to look at are the sample company file. So when you are in your client list in QuickBooks Online Accountant, we have all of these awesome resources up on the top toolbar. So if you click on the question mark, you can see that you have access to the QuickBooks Online sample company. And from the QuickBooks Online site, there's also links to test drive files and things like that so that you and your clients can go in here and look around and get comfortable with the product before you make the decision to convert. Another thing to note is that QuickBooks files, QuickBooks desktop files with multiple currency turned on cannot be converted. There is a company, I believe, out of Canada that will assist with the process of converting files with multiple currency. That's definitely something that you would want to look at in detail if you had a client with multiple currency that you wanted to convert, to make sure that you wouldn't have any other process limitations with that company. And then there's also what we talked about earlier about converting files with inventory. So currently, basically they say don't convert a company with inventory. There's other solutions for converting with inventory. There's add-ons, etc. The way that I look at it is every inventory situation is so different that maybe it will work with some setup adjustments. Maybe it's not the best decision. There's things like Lettuce, SOS Inventory, Exact Online. There's plenty of add-ons to help you with that. So really it's just about researching your specific situation with your QuickBooks desktop file, what your client's business processes are, and what the best inventory solution is. And then, of course, is it actually going to work the way that you want it to? So you really need to make sure that you're familiar with all of the details of the inventory situation while you're making your decision on what to do about moving your client to the cloud. All right, so hopefully everyone is around right now. For our CPE keyword is popcorn. I love popcorn. I had a bunch of kids over at my house for a slumber party watching movies and realized that I was out of popcorn this weekend, but now hopefully I'll remember to buy more with our awesome CPE word. So everybody note this down. I'm going to scroll through the questions really quick and see if we have anything flagged. And it doesn't look like we have any flags yet, so that's good. I'm going to dock those back, so hopefully everyone has this. Popcorn. Popcorn for your movies, popcorn for your CPE keyword, yay! Butter, salt, no salt, whatever you like, caramel corn, cheesy popcorn. It's all delicious. So hopefully everyone has that noted down now, and I'm going to move on. Make sure that you note this word. Save it for the end of the webinar when we will put up the poll for you to check the box next to the right CPE word. Please do not enter the CPE word in the question or chat window. So let's move on and look at some issues that we may encounter with lists when we're converting. So let's look at the inactive accounts and customers and vendors with a balance will come over as active. So if you have an inactive customer or vendor or account that has an outstanding balance, they will come over as active when you convert to QuickBooks Online. If the names have no balance, the inactive elements will convert as inactive. So the inactive items, which are products and services, and employees will convert as inactive regardless because those do not retain balances. If you need to remove elements from a list in QuickBooks Online, you can delete them with the option of restoring them at a later date. So all of the list elements in QuickBooks Online, delete and inactive basically mean the same thing in QuickBooks Online. So there is no real deleting like in desktop when you have something with no transactions linked and you can just delete it out. Things in QuickBooks Online become inactivated, or next to them they say deleted in parentheses, which essentially means inactivated. So those are nice little things to know if you are converting to QuickBooks Online and maybe you didn't notice something was inactive, had an outstanding balance, so you can go in there and clean it up either before or after. Your other names list will show up on the vendors list, so the other names will be missing in the payee field on checks. There are no custom fields for customers, vendors, or employees, and there are no customer types or sales reps. So these are things to definitely note if you have a company that's heavy on the sales rep. There is a way to make these custom fields in QuickBooks Online for sales reps and things like that, but it's not the same as in QuickBooks Desktop. So definitely go in to a sample company, or if you have your own demo company in QuickBooks Online, and play around with those custom fields. If you have customers or clients that do reporting by sales rep and things like that, you'll definitely want to make sure that you can make a comparable report in QuickBooks Online before you move them over to make sure that you're still tracking everything the way that they need to do for their business processes. Let's look at some of the data that does not carry over from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. Now you can see here that there's a link at the bottom of this slide. I'm actually going to paste that into the chat window here so that everybody has it, and we're even going to go to that link here in just a moment once we get done with this slide. So the first thing is we talked about inventory already, so let's look at payroll. So payroll details are not transferred to QuickBooks Online. The paychecks come over, your employee list will come over, but there are a lot of like payroll history details that don't transfer directly from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. So QuickBooks Online payroll is a different system than like QuickBooks Enhanced Payroll would be. So if you're running QuickBooks Enhanced Payroll, all of those details do not move over. Your tax information doesn't come over. Your unemployment rates and workers' comp rates and things like that will not come over. Your sales tax items and agencies, I feel like there may have been a change to this recently, so maybe if this is not correct, maybe Woody can jump in for us. But the sales tax items would need to be set up over again.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, Woody, can you help us out here? Is that still correct?
Yeah. Can you hear me better now, hopefully?
Yes, I can.
Is that good?
Thank
okay,
you.
thanks. Yeah, you're right. I apologize, everyone. This slide is a bit outdated. You're correct on the payroll, although a lot of payroll info comes over and a lot of the payroll items actually come over. You just really have to set up, like Katie said, year-to-date, as well as company contributions and things like that. And some of the W-4 info will be missing, but and of course the year-to-date, as I said. Sales tax items and agencies come over. There's no more any need to write like a regular check to clear out the old sales desktop sales tax liability. You can just start fresh in the Sales Tax Center of QuickBooks Online. Also, estimates convert, so that shouldn't be on there. QBO doesn't have price levels anyway. Budgets don't come over, and like Katie had mentioned, you can customize forms, but there's no real, you can't really create templates, so the sales form templates don't come over. And I'm going to put a updated link to a Better KB article that's pretty much updated as of this morning. The link in there is kind of the old KB that we will eventually update, but until then I have a Google Doc that you guys can all use that has, it's basically all the same info. I've just updated it to current behavior and language of the new QBO. So that's what I got. Is that
Awesome.
inventory comes over as two-sided items, but yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Woody. So yeah, Woody will share that link in the chat window, so make sure to copy that down. And let's look at, so like he said, there's no price levels. There are budgets in QuickBooks Online, but they do not convert from QuickBooks Desktop, so that's another thing that you can have. It just has to be recreated in QuickBooks Online. And then sales form templates we talked about, and the estimates do come over now, so that's good to know. So let's go back over here to our web browser and look at this link that I pasted in the chat window, this qboe.customerhelp.com, well, custhelp technically. So when we go here, this gives us a beautiful chart of what comes over and how. So Woody, you'll have to jump in if this is not up to date. So it looks like there may be some things that need to be updated here, but I'm not sure because I haven't read it yet today.
Right,
so
yeah, so that's the old doc I was telling you not to use.
Okay.
So
right.
we'll
let's
update the slide, and you know, we've been doing a lot of testing. You know, it's funny, it's very pertinent that Katie's doing this class today, because a bunch of us for Advanced Cert, for QuickBooks Connect, we're all testing the conversion. So this Google Doc is up to date as of this morning, and it has the same exact info, so you're not going to miss out versus the KB, but it'll have that estimates convert, etc. So I put it in the chat. You guys just use that, and eventually the old KB will be updated, and we can go back to that. So this is kind of like just to fill the hole till it's there, so you guys have the right info. Fair enough?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Woody. You've been super helpful. All right, so this is the link that Woody sent us all, so make sure to note this down from your chat window, and we can try to include these in our materials that go out. So we'll send out your notes and the recording from this webinar, and we'll get these links in there for you guys too, so that you have more updated course materials. So throughout the process of writing our new QuickBooks Online Accountant certification this year, we've been kind of testing and discovering these new things. So we're just kind of going with the flow today, but these are all relevant, and Woody is just the best at making sure that all of these things are tested and shared with us. So thank you again, Woody, for that. Let's go back to our PowerPoint, and we'll move forward here, and let's look at cleaning up prior to importing. So we already talked about how we want to make sure that we don't have any data integrity issues. We talked about pressing F2 within QuickBooks Desktop to check our file size, our fragments, etc. Now, sometimes files, when they're moved from one platform to another, like say you have a client who used Windows and went to Mac and then went back. I don't know if any of you have encountered this issue before. I certainly have, and you end up with all of these crazy things where you verify and rebuild, and then the next time you go to back up, it's broken again. So those are things that need to be addressed through the QB win log. Some pro advisors are very familiar with that and work in it a lot. Others will not even touch it, and some of you may not even know what I'm talking about. So this is one of those reasons why it's very important to buddy up with your peers, so that if you don't know what I'm talking about or don't want to touch it, you know somebody that will fix it for you. So the QB win log can be easy to read sometimes, and sometimes you don't know what the heck is going on. So definitely look at that if you're having issues getting your data integrity fixed. Sometimes it's just one little problem or a handful of transactions that need one little fix once you've like round trip from Mac to PC, etc. So really just make sure that you have resources to deal with that. And of course, if you are in the Pro Advisor program, or if you have Cloud Pro Advisors, if you are a Cloud Pro Advisor who is certified in QuickBooks Online, you have Intuit technical support to back you up on these things. That's just another reason why it's so important to join the Pro Advisor program and make sure that you stay certified so that you have those resources. Another thing that we can do is condense the data. So if you have a giant file, you can look at condensing that down. We talked briefly about that a little bit earlier, and I will look at that in more detail in just a few minutes. And then there's also the do-over. So this is the purging the data from the home page. So here we have these links to purge the company. So let's say that you are in a QuickBooks Online file that's just completely trashed. Maybe somebody imported data. Maybe you imported the wrong file into QuickBooks Online, or something just happened that you just don't want to deal with and you want to wipe it out. You can always just enter this link to purge the company, and it will come up with a big warning, are you sure you want to do this? And then it has a tiny little box down in the corner where you have to physically type in the word yes. So it's not going to let you accidentally do this without being aware of what you're doing. So that's a good thing to have in your tool belt just in case you want to do it. If you just want to try it for fun with your demo file just to see what it does, go ahead and do that. This is definitely not something I would recommend testing in a client file because you can't undo it. Okay, so now let's look at the condensing data. So hopefully, if you've used desktop before, you may be familiar with the condensing data feature. So let's flip back over to QuickBooks Desktop. We'll look back at Mr. Larry for Larry's Landscaping. So to condense our data, we start with the File drop-down. We go down to Utilities, and we have the condensed data right down here. So through our conversion process, hopefully we've already done the verify, and we've done the rebuild, and now maybe our file is really big and we want to condense it. So this is something that you may use in desktop also, not in a conversion process, but it's definitely a good resource to have when you are converting to QuickBooks Online. So let's push this button. So here we can say what transactions do we want to remove. So we can specify removing transactions before a certain date. We can say all transactions, which just wipes everything out, or we can select a date range. So most likely you'll be choosing transactions before a certain date, and you may choose to go back, just keep the last year or the last couple years or whatever it is for that client specifically. I had a client, I've had them for 2 or 3 years now, and they had over 10 years of data. They were from 2001. They had all of their data in QuickBooks, and they wondered why it was so slow. So we did a condense. It's really helpful to speed up files and to get the right amount of information into QuickBooks Online, because you can always keep the historical desktop file for reference. So you may want to copy the file so that you save the backup, or maybe you want an active company file that has all of the transactions in it, and then you'll make a copy of that, condense it, and use that condensed copy to convert to QuickBooks Online. So here we'll just leave this date in here of 10/1. And then our next option is how do we want to summarize all of those transactions? Because we all know that in accounting, things don't really go away, right? They all have to stay there for our numbers to stay the same. So we can choose to create one summary journal entry, or we can create summary journal entries for each month, which is very helpful if you have a client that wants to run comparison reports. Or you could say don't create a summary and just wipe everything out. So I don't usually ever push that button because I usually like to have something for comparison. I'll frequently use the entry for each month if it's like a construction company or someone that may want to, that has fluctuating work throughout the year so that you can compare to previous years. But we'll just use the recommended one right here. We say next again. And then how do we want to condense our inventory? So do we want to summarize our transactions, or do we want to keep most of the transaction details? So these are things that you'll make the decision on depending on your client. And you just next your way through here. And now what do we want to remove specifically? So let's really pay attention to this right here. So what do we want to remove? We're going to talk about this when we talk about another thing here in a few minutes. So look at our options here. We can remove unreconciled transactions. So maybe we want to do this if we know that our accounts are reconciled up to date and we have no outstanding checks. I don't know how likely it is that you're working in a file with no outstanding checks, unless maybe it's someone that just does after the fact, but that's a decision that you will have to make based on the file that you're working in. And then we can take away the to be printed mark on all of the to be printed checks. So this basically clears out your check spooler. You can also take off the to be sent invoices and estimates. You can remove all of these non-posting transactions that are estimates, sales orders, POs, and pending invoices. You can also remove all of your time and mileage activities and transactions containing unbilled expenses and items. So here you can make your selections. You can say select none. You can just check a couple of them, whatever you want. Now our next one is the list entries. So this is a multi-purpose feature here. So this is where we can remove the inactive list entries. So if you have, this page is for the unused entries. So if you have any items or accounts or whatever that have not been used in transactions, you can remove them out of the file so that you're not pulling all of this irrelevant data into QuickBooks Online and bogging it down. Because remember, once your file's in QuickBooks Online, inactivating and deleting become the same thing. So if you have names that you pull into QBO that you just want to get rid of, when you delete them, they're actually just inactive. This is an important thing to note for things like sub-customers or jobs. So in desktop, they're called jobs, and online, they're called sub-customers. So you should really know the limits of QuickBooks Online and having sub-customers and sub-accounts and all of those things and making sure that you're within the parameters. And then you begin your condense. So we're not actually going to push this button because anyone that's ever condensed a file knows how long it takes. We don't want to bog down our bandwidth for our awesome webinar today. So we'll just pretend like we're going to push it. We condense the file, and then it's ready to upload to QuickBooks Online. I'm just going to back up here a little bit because we're going to talk about this again in a moment. So let's close this down here. Go back into our slideshow. Okay. So let's talk about starting fresh. So we looked at the ways that we can get our data into QuickBooks Online by using the desktop converter tool or by uploading the company file directly into QuickBooks Online through our client list. So if you cannot or do not want to convert all of your data, you can create a blank new file just from your list, and then you can enter beginning balance entries or whatever you need to do to get your file going. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. We're going to talk about the two different ways. So one is to export your lists and clean them up in Excel, and then import them into QuickBooks Online. The other way is to create a new desktop file from your list and clean that up in desktop, and then move the file up to QuickBooks Online. Each one has differing benefits, and it really just kind of depends on what your goal is for your conversion. We're going to look at both of them. So back into our desktop file, we're going to go to File, Utilities. We're going to export our list to IIF files. So when we export our list to an IIF, if you've worked with that before, it's basically a spreadsheet with all of our data in it and a bunch of other things that QuickBooks uses to read it. So let's start, we'll just do our customer list. And you want to do these one at a time so that they're more legible and easier to clean up. Also, if you have really long lists, you may occasionally encounter a list export error or a list import error. So with the list export to CSV, I don't really see those errors, but in the next one that we talk about, if you do encounter an error or something comes out incomplete, it's much easier to diagnose if you're doing one list at a time and not all of your lists into one big spreadsheet where you have to sort through and try to read through the QuickBooks tech speak in the spreadsheet. So let's just do the customer list, and we'll put it on our desktop, and we'll say customer list. It's an IIF, and we'll save it. And then we're going to, okay, we've been successful. So then when we go into Excel, we can open that up as a CSV. Go open, desktop. We need to make sure that this is on all files because you see when I just look at Excel, I don't see it there. We can scroll down to our customer list, this IIF file. So let's open that up. And then it's going to say, hey, you have this weird file here. What do you want me to do with it? I just say, this looks good to me. Next, sure, finish, and all of the information comes in. So you can see we have all of this information up here that is the garble. So we can just delete that. And then we have all of our information here that came out of QuickBooks Desktop. So you'll have to comb through this. You've got your customer name, your addresses, etc. So you can clean this up here in Excel, and then you can import this information into QuickBooks Online. So once you have this all cleaned up, you need to make sure that it's formatted appropriately to import into QuickBooks Online. How do we know how to format it? You may ask. I will show you. So the awesome thing about importing from Excel into QuickBooks Online is they show us the templates. I don't know how many people on the line today. Actually, I'm going to ask. So how many people on the line today, just use your questions or chat window to tell me this. How many people have custom formatted IIF templates for import into QuickBooks Desktop in the past? Anybody else on the line ever had to do that? They have that cool like folder packet that you could download from the help site that had all of the templates, and you had to read it and like pre-format it and get your errors. It looks like Tom has. All right, Lynette has. So was that fun, guys? Did you guys enjoy that? Was it just super awesome? I see lots of no's. Nope, nope. With an exclamation point from Tom. Yeah, so for me, it was really exciting after you put like the 18 hours in to actually make it work properly, and you could high-five yourself in your office, but nobody else cared that it worked right? I mean, we could probably talk to each other and high-five each other for making it work, but your client just wanted it to work. They don't really care. So the awesome thing about QuickBooks Online is they make it way easier for it to just work. So instead of having us have to work for it, they just give us the resources and it just works. So here under Tools, we have this Import Data button, and we have a little selection of the different types of lists that we can import into QuickBooks Online. And then it also gives us our awesome Excel template. You know, from my audience view, there we go. Sometimes on GoToWebinar, we have some propagation issues where everything is bright and ready on my screen, but maybe it's not showing. So if that's happening and my voice is ahead of what you're seeing, just kind of make a mental note and keep up with me here. So here we have the different types of lists that we can import with Excel or with other files. So this is a bank file here for bank transactions. So let's say we want to import our customer list. Well, how does that need to look to come into QuickBooks Online? So here we can say, all right, let's import our customers. Oh, look, we can download a sample file. So we just push our little button here to download the sample file. You can see it downloads here at the bottom of my screen. We can open it up when it's done downloading here. Let me get that on the right screen. Here we go. And you can see this is what QuickBooks Online wants it to look like. So here we have, oh, I scrolled way over. We have our name, company, email, etc. So as you can see, this data and our QuickBooks Desktop export don't exactly look the same, right? They look a little bit different. We've got all these extra columns in our desktop export. We really need to get it together to import that. And you can also see that we have the multi-part address in the QuickBooks Online import, but in the QuickBooks Desktop export, everything is lumped together. So this is the biggest reason for me that I prefer the IIF method to a new QuickBooks Desktop file and uploading it that way. So let's look at that. So here we can clean this up. Another option that you have is you can get these cleaned up in Excel if it's easier for you, or you can just use the Add, Edit, Multiple List Entries to change some things. So let's say that we just delete a huge chunk of these out, right? We don't want these people in here anymore. Well, we can still use our Add, Edit, Multiple List Entries once we get rid of these irrelevant columns and paste these into a new file if we wanted. So that's one way to, if you want to clean up your list in Excel and then paste them into QuickBooks Desktop with that Add, Edit, Multiple List Entries, which hopefully you all know what I'm talking about. I'll show you here. That's another workaround to edit your info in Excel, clean it up, and then paste it into a brand new file. Now, if you just want to bypass Excel altogether, which is what I usually do, we take those IIFs and we put them in a brand new file for QuickBooks Desktop. So there's a couple of different ways we can do that. One is exporting the list like we just did to an IIF, and then opening a brand new file, setting up the information, and importing the list back in. And then, of course, we would again use that Add, Edit, Multiple List Entries to clean it up. Or this is where that condense feature comes back in. So if we make a copy of the company, so we can create a copy, or we can export all of our lists to IF. Export your list to IFs individually so that if you get an error, you can pinpoint it in your new file. So let's pretend that we exported these. Now we're in our new Larry's Landscaping file. I like to do the create copy because it pulls over all of the company information too so that you don't have to re-enter it. But of course you can always customize the company information in desktop because that's the info that's going to pull over to QuickBooks Online. So you can change your company name or whatever you want. So then when you're in your new file with all of those lists, so we copied those lists over, we left our old file just the way it was. We've got 500 customers on our customer list, 250 of them are inactive. So we've got a couple options. So option one is we can go into the Customer Center and we can right click and let's delete and blah, blah, blah. Right? Does that sound like fun? Do people like to do that? Go through and click each one and delete? I definitely don't like to do that. So what I do is I go in here and I say, let's look at all of my customers. Okay, you're no more, you're no more. And you can just go through and inactivate them, right? Now you might be thinking, but Katie, you just told us that inactive names will still come over to QuickBooks Online and we only have so many, we only want our file to be so big. So this is where that condense feature comes in that we talked about earlier. So in our new file that only has our lists, we can go through lightning fast with our little X button and just fire all these customers. So here, that one has balance. We can say everyone with a zero balance, we just want to X off. Okay, now we can run our condensing tool that we already talked about and remove our inactive list entries. So now, instead of trying to clean up an existing desktop file, let me get to actually what I'm talking about here. Now we've just copied all of our lists over to a brand new file, inactivated everything on the list that we didn't want to come over to QuickBooks Online, and then we can go through. We don't really care about any of this stuff about transactions because our new file doesn't have any of that. All it has is lists, right? So now we can just flip through here. We don't care about transactions because we don't have any. We just go to the last one and we say that we want to remove the all of the inactive names. So we can just clear all of those out and then move forward with our life. Yay, so exciting. And again, there's also the option if you just want to clean these up in Excel, maybe you want to have someone else do it for you. Maybe you have like the husband and wife where maybe the wife does the books but the husband knows all the customers or whatever. Maybe they just want to send this to someone in the company, or maybe you do all of the accounting for one of your clients. You can have your client go in or whoever and clean up the Excel list and then just use that batch enter feature, which we can't really do here because I didn't clear all these out, but we'll pretend. So batch enter, where you can just copy all of the data and paste it right in. I don't know if you all have used that before. It's under lists right here, add edit multiple. So if your columns, you can adjust these columns in this window also. But if your columns here match your columns in Excel, you can just copy and paste that data in. So as you can see, there's a lot of different options for converting your data, either just the names or converting the whole thing. So it's really important to be familiar with all of the different options so that you can choose the best solution for each client, because every client is going to be a totally different situation. All right, so now that we have that done and all of our data is in QuickBooks Online, what do we want to do next? What do we want to look at? Of course, we need to verify our reports. So you want to run your P&L and your balance sheet if you converted with balances, or if you entered beginning balances to start over, you want to make sure that everything matches up. So you're going to run your P&L and your balance sheet accrual-based for all dates so that you can really compare and make sure that everything matches up in both of your systems once you've pulled it over. Now this is assuming that you're pulling the data over from QuickBooks Desktop and that it actually is good data. You also, of course, we just talked about that, all dates, accrual basis. And then other things that you'll want to compare is your AR and AP. So if you're doing the beginning balances, we know that we want to make sure that our outstanding AR and our outstanding AP is entered, outstanding checks, etc., which again makes it important to look at those reports to make sure that everything's balancing out properly. And then your sales tax liabilities and your payroll tax liabilities. So like Woody was telling us earlier, there's been some awesome changes and upgrades made to the way that the sales tax stuff is pulled over. So making sure that you copy that link down that he gave to us in the chat window and that you're familiar with that if you're in a sales tax state. and also the payroll tax liabilities. So if you're moving from QuickBooks Enhanced Payroll for Desktop, you need to make sure that you're getting that data put into QuickBooks Online Payroll if that's what you're switching to. Or, it just really depends on your payroll solution. Are you using a third-party solution? Maybe you have a desktop client that's already using IOP, Intuit Online Payroll, or something like that, where really it's just a matter of making sure that those entries moved over from desktop and then syncing the IOP with the QBO file, the Intuit Online Payroll with the QuickBooks Online file. So that's another thing, being familiar with those nuances for your state and for the type of clients that you support, making sure that you know the inventory, the tax, and the payroll details for getting that info switched over. Some other things to do after converting, like we talked about the payroll, that the items don't come over. A lot of the data comes over once you've selected your solution, making sure that you have everything in there. Same with your sales tax items. The inventory that we've talked about throughout today's webinar, making sure that you really understand what your client's situation is and having that solution, that alternative in place before you're just pushing their information onto the cloud. Sometimes you will encounter clients that move themselves onto the cloud that have totally butchered it. I had one that went from desktop to the cloud and back and couldn't understand why their inventory was so messy. That was very interesting. So really knowing how QuickBooks Online handles these certain situations so that if you do get called in after the fact, once a client has tried to do it themselves, you can understand the potential things that maybe went wrong with their steps and be able to fix them after the fact. Making sure all of your accounts are reconciled up to date. So we have a best practice in my office. When we move a client to QuickBooks Online, first we make sure that everything is reconciled to date. So for example, today is October 15th, so we would ensure that all of the accounts were reconciled through the end of September, and then we would undo the September reconciliations, upload the file to QuickBooks Online, and the first thing we would do is re-reconcile those September accounts. The reason that we do that is because the reconciliation reports do not transfer. The R status does transfer, so the reconciled status comes over with the transaction. But it being the 15th of the month, at the beginning of next month when we would go to reconcile October, we would always have this little freak out session of, oh my gosh, this account's never been reconciled, there's no report in here. So even though we know that about ourselves, we've just made it a best practice so we avoid that little 5-minute delay of wondering why in the heck this client has never had an account reconciliation, because it doesn't show us their September reconciliation from desktop unless we do it in QuickBooks Online. So that's just a little pointer I'll throw out there for you. You don't have to do that. It's just something that we do in our office, but you do want to make sure that you're reconciled up to date. If you are more adjusted to QuickBooks Desktop, if you're a newer QBO user, I definitely recommend doing all of the relevant cleanup in your desktop file before you move over. So if you have a client that still needs a few things done for their file to be completely cleaned up or to date, do it in desktop first and save yourself the trouble of trying to relearn that in QuickBooks Online if you're not already super familiar with it. And that way you can acclimate to QuickBooks Online by doing regular processes instead of trying to figure out the cleanup on something that's already behind. Your document attachments do not convert, so if you have files attached to transactions in QuickBooks Desktop, they will not convert to QuickBooks Online. You can attach files in QuickBooks Online, they just don't move over with the desktop file. You also want to make sure that you get all of your users set up and make sure that you educate your clients on how to accept access to their files. Your client has to accept the user access and set up their own username and password to get into it. If you set up the file, you may need to transfer the master admin. And another thing that you want to do, if you set up the file from your client list, make sure that you comb through those company settings and that all of the information that's in the company file, which I'll show you how to do that here really quick. When you go to the gear icon or tools and you go into your company settings, you want to make sure that the EIN, the email address, the company name, the contact information, that all of that stuff is actually relevant to your client. So every once in a while when we set up, like you can see, here's this one, it has my email address. every once in a while it will pull in the email address for the Intuit ID that you use to set up the file. So if you are doing the setup from point A, from start to finish for your clients, it may have pulled in some of your Intuit ID information. So you want to go through here and make sure it has your client's email address, all of your client contact information, so that they don't go to send an invoice and it shows that it came from you to their customer. All right, so let's talk about the QuickBooks Cloud Pro Advisor program. One thing I skipped right there was the closing date and password. So when you first set up, you may want to do that for your close periods, but you definitely want to do that going forward to lock your clients out. And password protect it. I always password protect it. That way, even if your client is capable of making transactions past the closing date, you still want to know. And you need to have the closing date so that you can run the exceptions to closing date report and see if they actually made changes to a closed period. All right, so looking at the QuickBooks Cloud Pro Advisor program, if you have not heard of it yet, this is a separate program from the regular QuickBooks Pro Advisor program. It includes your free access to QuickBooks Online Accountant, free QuickBooks Online training and CPE, your free QuickBooks Online certification, and access to the turnkey marketing tools and support like your Pro Advisor listing, chat support, phone support, etc. And we have a link right here to sign up, the short link for the Cloud Pro Advisor. So you can always look at this for becoming a Cloud Pro Advisor, or look at becoming a Desktop Pro Advisor, where all of these benefits and more are included in that program. So some reasons to get certified in QuickBooks Online. You get that free listing on the Find a Pro Advisor website. I get at least 5 calls a month from my Pro Advisor listing. I absolutely love it. It's awesome. It's a great way to market yourself in your area. It's also a great way to network with peers. So I have looked other people up on the Find a Pro Advisor listing to call and ask questions. And I've also been contacted by my peers from my listing. You can stay up to date on the product knowledge, distinguish yourself as certified, etc. So it's really nice to have that certification. And now, once you get your QuickBooks Online certification, you'll have access to the QuickBooks Online Advanced certification that's going to be rolling out this year, which is super exciting and I'm really excited about. And of course, on that note, if you are going to QuickBooks Connect, you'll have access to that advanced training next week. Very, very exciting. If you haven't registered yet, you can see that there's a 10% discount code for attending today's webinar. There's still time to get in there. Southwest Airlines has some great deals on flights. Mine was only like $150 round trip. Super exciting. Some big news coming out. You can earn up to 24 CPE credits. They'll have entrepreneurs, small business owners, developers, accountants, lots of people from Intuit. It's going to be very, very exciting. And then we have that developer hackathon happening there. It's just going to be great. So that's the 21st through 23rd. That is next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And there's also a special event Thursday if you got signed up early. So I hope to see you all there. And you can get more information at QuickBooksConnect.com. So today, now hopefully we know how to convert from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online with the QuickBooks Desktop Converter tool or by uploading straight into QBO. We know about the limitations of converting. We understand alternatives to converting, and we can identify things to do after converting. So let's all get ready. Get out your note to enter our CPE keyword. You're going to see a poll flash up in front of your screen. And just check the box for the proper CPE word. And while you all are doing that, I'm going to pop open the questions window and see if we have anything that we need to address here. Looks like our tech support on the line has done a wonderful job. So Woody, if you have any things that were recurring that you think maybe we need to talk about verbally, you can go ahead and come on and tell us about it. Otherwise, I will just skim through these.
No, just about, the first 60 days when you can purge the data or overwrite it from desktop.
Okay. So,
and then the only other one was about how far can you go back to undo reconciliations in QBO.
Well, you do 1 month at a time, right? And
Right.
you can go back as far as you want, but they're
Oh,
only
sure.
it's only good for the QBO reconciliation. So if you have, let's say that you converted your file today, you could not undo reconciliations that were done in desktop because that reconciliation data per rec doesn't come over. The transactions come over as reconciled, but you have no way to undo those desktop reconciliations. You can only undo all of your QBO reconciliations. So that's something to note too, and that's why it's so important to do that desktop cleanup before you come over to QBO and make sure that you have all your ducks in a row.
Yeah, it's a great idea about unreconciling in desktop first the last month and then just doing it again in QBO.
Yeah, that's an office rule for us. All right, awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, and we still have about 11% needing to vote, so I'll leave that up for another moment. And thank you all for joining us today, and make sure you download all that information from Woody, and I look forward to hopefully seeing all of you next week.